Welcome, everybody, to the Blind Ambition with Jack Kelly. We have a special guest today. It's Christine Park, who's the Chief People Officer of Pantheon. She's built her career in identifying the people implications of business strategies. And before joining Pantheon, she was the Chief People Officer at the marketing tech company Sitecore and the Executive Director of HR at TriNet. For those that don't know, Pantheon is a software as a service website operations platform that empowers developers, designers, marketers, and IT folks to create extraordinary websites. With Pantheon, digital teams can collaborate and iterate their websites with speed and agility. These are companies like Stitch Fix, Okta, Home Depot, Pernod Ricard that use Pantheon to transform the way their web teams work. So thanks for coming on the show, Christine.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start right there because it's very rare that we get the chance to speak with someone at such a high level of people operations and in HR.
Mhm.
Did you always know you wanted to build a career in HR?
No, in full transparency, I didn't go to college and wake up and say, I want to be an HR.
When you were a little girl, that wasn't part of your dream to be
No,
an
that
HR
was not
person?
it. That was not it. And,
No?
it's very embarrassing, but there was not even a department called HR when I graduated. It was called the personnel department. So even more, it's not that I didn't just go, wow, I want my career in HR. So like any graduate, I had to go to those campus interviews and had to look for a job to pay off some of my loans that I incurred in college. And all the STEM majors at Berkeley, they all got these wonderful jobs. And in those times, it was within, like Boeing, like in defense industry, right? And non STEM majors like me, who was majored in sociology, there was not too much. So I was either going to go to a teaching school, but there was a management trainee job for banks. Banks were very big recruiters then. It's just really transformed since then. So I joined the bank, a California bank, I think most of you guys know, which was acquired by Union Bank, and those banks don't even exist anymore. And I did the whole 1-year rotational program, and I really thought I was going to be an international banker. And I knew I picked the banking industry because what I did know is I liked people, I liked interacting with people, and that I knew. And so I thought was going to be an international banking with that. Really didn't know what I was doing. And then one of the COOs, and she's been very pivotal in my career, and it's one of those people that I met, and she said, we would like to put you into personnel department. And that was my first knock at my face in my career, going, what? But that's my career since then. And she wanted to revamp the personnel department at that time. So I joined the personnel department, which eventually turned to human resources. And I've been in that field since then. And it's been fascinating, right?
I forgot that they used to call it personnel department. When you brought it up, I'm like, yes, that would, so probably maybe give or take the same age. So yeah, they called it that. And it's interesting, change human resources, talent acquisition, all
Yes.
kind of new titles to it.
Yes. Now they don't even call people HR, right? I think people call it people team, employee, all these. But anyways, that's how I started my career. And it's been a very, very exciting journey for the past 5 years. I don't want to take myself. So yes, it's been a great to see this wonderful evolution of our workplace evolution, how we interact with our employee, how we view engagement with employees, how companies has evolved of looking at people and the business implications. So it's been an amazing ride.
I mean, I'm curious there. You mentioned like the changes of names, right? So before it was personnel, then it became human resources. I think we see something similar with like recruiting. Now it's talent acquisition.
Yes.
Employee benefits and pay is now total
Total
rewards.
rewards. Yes.
What is behind these kind of name shifts? Is it because that discipline or that job is taking on more responsibility, or is it just clever PR and branding?
I think at the heart of it, of course, everybody wants to change these names, but at the heart of it, it's how we view individual employees and workforce. Because if you look at it in the 50s, and I don't want to get into my history of that, but it's the evolution of how we look at our employees. So as our society changes, and I worked at Kia Motors America, where it's commodity, right? So like, for example, if you're doing cars, or like if you're working for Walmart, which is really a logistic business, right? Like when you kind of think about it, of goods. But as our society has turned to technology, and as we go into high tech, when you think about it, like a company like Pantheon, 80% of our OpEx is our people. When you think about our business strategy and our delivery of our vision, product vision, it's all the people that makes it happen. We're not making widgets, right? It's the intellectual property. So I think that the human aspect of delivering business result has changed. And therefore, I think that's the change of it, where it's not just about recruiting, it's about talent partner. It's about how we acquire talent, like because that becomes a very critical. So I think it's about, as we evolve to technology companies, even you look at Pantheon, we're just going through our strategic planning. Nothing could happen without our people. 80% of our OpEx is people. It's intellectual capital, property.
Christine, how is it different now than it was just, let's say, 4 years ago in HR, in terms of getting employees engaged, taking care of their mental health, recruiting them, retaining them? It seems to me it's been a drastic change in everything going on.
Yes, I think the change has been going on, Jack. But I think what happened with COVID, it became a catalyst to accelerate that change to me. So when you stop and think about it, as consumers, I want you guys to individually think about it. As consumer, how we consume, like say Netflix, go watch a movie. Before, you had to buy a ticket and go to a movie theater, right? I mean, and you even bought tickets at the movie theater. You go to stores, the way we consume information, way we buy things as a consumer has changed, right? So what's happened is in the workforce, how individual employees consume information, how they engage with the company, that I think has changed with COVID, with all of us just being remote, with digital. So it's about digital transformation in our engagement, how that's happening in the world. And that's why Pantheon, what we do is, I think marketers, I think every stores now, every brand has to look at what their digital footprint is and how they acquire customer through their digital experience, right? So I think that really translates to how we engage employees, and that going through that digital transformation of how they consume, how they engage, the employee experience. I think that whole shift has accelerated with COVID. And I think that acceleration is going to continue and actually go faster, in my view, in the next 5 years of how we treat, engage employees and create engagement.
So it sounds like what you're saying in part is that HR, modern day HR, has to almost kind of brand themselves as this is who we are, this is what we offer, this is what we how we could incentivize workers to come on board, to stay on board, how to keep them growing, how to have them reach their full potential. And it sounds like that's going to be a big part of it. And then because people are working remotely, you need to rely on digital skills to figure out how do we keep people engaged who are working all over the world and not even seeing each other in person.
That's right. And it's
a big job, right?
It's a big job. And more important to me is, how do we create that in this remote world? How do we create a real fundamental culture of where individual voices are heard and their individualization is respected, and create that inclusive culture, yet have a corporate culture, right, to drive the business? I think it's fundamentally not only about talent acquisition or that, but it's creating that inclusive culture, because I think more and more in our modern world, I think we are recognizing that there are different types of, and when we talk about DEI, I'm not talking about just race. I think that is just at the tip of the thing. There's so many gamuts. So it's about, as we engage employees as leaders, how do we create a safe space and a real sense of belonging and an engagement where people are connected to something bigger than the Zoom, their work, in their bedroom, like I here. So it's a daunting task.
So how do you do that? How do you, where somebody, let's say, not your company, but just hypothetical, you have these software engineers who just really care about their total compensation and how much money they can make and how they can kind of get to that next level. And then compare that with somebody who is maybe not in tech and is not on that kind of, arc. How do you have a Gen Z and then you have a baby boomer, and like, how do you, all these people with different needs, different wants, like, how do you put it together and manage that?
Yeah, it is. And like I said, that is the biggest task, right? Because we can't accommodate 700 individual people. There is some corporate, but I do think how you manage that, to me, is values. And this is kind of the way I've been kind of really managing our company. And even at Sitecore, we were in 37 countries. So just forget Gen X. I mean, I will tell you, our Danish colleagues, our Americans frustrate the whatever out of our Danish colleagues the way we, and so it's, I think what it is we all talk about, that's why corporate values become the glue. I think we could accept our differences in terms of our motivations are different, right? Like, when you are raising your family, when you're in your career, that your motivation and your desires are a little different than maybe when you are retired. We talk about baby boomers, right? You want to make more impact. Like our motivations are all personalized. So I think we have to recognize that in your career development versus that old-fashioned way of creating one ladder where, you got to look at each person's rear end, and they got to move over and then you go up. I think that has to fundamentally change. How we develop people have to fundamentally change. And when I say that, I'm not talking about not having hierarchy, but there needs to be innovative way to develop people, right? And how they gain. So, but for some reason, I believe, we talk about digital personalization. You guys, and maybe because I've been with Sitecore, that's kind of what you look at personalization of buyers. I think that it's very similar to employees, because I will tell you, my motivation of what brings me joy at work is a little different 20 years ago than now, right? Because I have an evolution in my life cycle and everyone's different. So we need to have a very personalized approach, but what binds all that together is corporate values. And I think that corporate value, it's like many armies under one flag, right? It's the corporate values. And so I really encourage employees and companies to really articulate and live their values and their mission, because that allows people to know if that is something that they're going to sign up for, that's greater. So that I am very, very keen on, rather, I like to personalize development and do a lot of personalization, but under one flag, where the overriding is our corporate value and our corporate mission and our corporate goals.
I like that you say that, because I think a lot of folks, when they're in the job search, they might receive information or a packet from a recruiter or the company HR, and they kind of almost like their eyes glaze over or they roll their eyes, right? And they think, sure, fine, every company says they want to do XYZ, but if they really kind of get over that first hurdle and really think about, okay, let's actually scrutinize what this means, because before I even join the company, it's a window into the culture, how my
Yes,
work is going to be rewarded or incentivized, or even what kind of projects I'm going to be on, right? That's all
yes,
connected to the values, the mission.
exactly. And also, I really encourage employees to say, oh, is this a company that's private equity backed? Or is it venture backed? Is it a Series B? Is it $100 million and over? Because we know that companies that are under 100 million has a very distinct um, challenges and opportunities. And companies that are like when they hit 100 million, we also know that they have very distinct opportunities and challenges, and companies that are public. So I think also employees need to know what you want and what in your life at this moment, what is it that's going to bring you joy at work. We all know we have to get a paycheck and make a living. Okay, we all know that. That's the basic. And I'm assuming, but it might be where I can now say, you know what, my kids are all graduated college. I don't need to save for college fund, but so maybe I can take a risk going to a Series C company and take more options versus like, these are some of the things that I really encourage individuals to look at. And if it matches your personal stage in your life and matches your motivational versus salary and title, because that is just the tip, and then what I encourage employers and HR leaders to do is be very, and it's a two-way street, right? It can't be a one-way street, but I do because I made a lot of mistakes too in my career and in my life. I just had to run through it. It was not in a situation where you job hopped. Like if I had to put so if you look at my career, it's 10 years, and then it's like that. So I really encourage employees to go into self-reflection so there's so many opportunities out there, and go to a company where it fits your motivational fit and your desire that brings you joy.
It's interesting you mentioned about job hopping. Where do you see the things going in the future? Do you think that moving maybe every year is going to be the norm? Or will companies kind of say, no, we want people to stay longer because we put so much time and energy in training. And if you're leaving, let's say within a year, we really didn't get a return on our investment.
Yeah.
How do you see these things playing out?
I do think it's always the pendulum shifts, and it always goes like this, right? It goes from here to here, and then it just kind of goes like this. So I don't think it's gonna be, I think 2 years is a very norm. But even now, if it's a couple months, 1 year, and once or twice, if there's a reason, like your company got bought or you go in, and we're experiencing a environment now where after you got hired, they lay you off. I think everybody has that. So I don't think it's a black and white, but when you see trends of what I think generally they're still going to shy away from that, because it takes a good 6 months to really get people onboarded and really do that. And by that time, that's when you actually get production. So with that said, I think it also puts a lot of onus on the company to create and retain. It's not about just the acquisition. It's about once you acquire, how do you retain and really get that return on investment on that retention. It's getting that retention after you acquire. So that's on the company.
Now, how do you do that? How do you keep people engaged and keep them, in their seats, not leaving, staying, being involved? Because it sounds easy, but it's hard to do, especially when, well, now we're in this weird zone where there's a lot of layoffs, downsizing, we don't know, but just put that aside. What do you do to make sure that, Rick and Jack stay in their seats, they're happy, they're engaged, they're motivated, and we're not just talking to recruiters, when we're working remotely and sending out our resumes?
I could ask you guys, I think fundamentally as human beings, we like to be part of something. We're social animals. right? Like, I really believe that. And my major was in sociology, by the way. So I really didn't have a job.
Yeah.
I didn't have a choice. But so I think we could all say that. Like, I know this audience is very technical, but I work with technical people, okay? My 3 founders are the most technical people. When they talk to me, 70% goes over my head sometimes, okay? So I just have to listen. But so I love it. And so it's, when you really look at, to me, I don't care how technical you could be doing this, whatever, we're social animals. We like to be appreciated, and we like to be part of something a little bigger than my little desk. I am a firm believer of that, right? So I think it's very important. Like, at some point, 100,000 people don't leave for 110,000. You know, people, that's a excuse to leave, right? But it's really about what people like is, so to me, Jack, to your question, is it comes down to leadership, right? I think it's really, I think leadership is going to have to really transform. When I say leadership, I'm not talking about boss. We conflate being a boss to a leader, and we always say leader is how many people, like, you know, span of control. We tend to do that because that's how we've been traditionally brought up, but it's about leadership. And I think people feel very motivated when they know that what they do is linked to something greater, and people all like to know that they're fighting something bigger, and that their work is in there, and they feel deeply appreciated and connected with their immediate person that knows what they're doing. And sometimes we forget that part, and we are just doing OKRs, right? When you look at OKRs, it's like, did you get this task done? But I think there's a deeper layer, because we're human. We're not machines. So I think it's about creating that real stickiness and feeling appreciated, and being heard, being visible, and having accessibility. I think that is something that all leaders need to really think about at their all levels.
Is that why you see so many companies will say, you know, hey, we have a mission of changing the world, where they're just making a widget. They're not really changing the world, but they want to get people kind of in that mindset that, hey, we're all in this together on this mission. And also, I noticed too, I imagine it sounds like you do this at your company, kind of offer this psychological safety as well,
Oh, yeah.
that people feel, hey, they could do their job. If they make a mistake, that's
Yes.
okay. You're not going to get yelled at. You know, we'll learn from it and move forward. So this way you can feel comfortable. And also, I've noticed this through recruiting, and you were talking about this, we're social animals, that if you have, I've always noticed, and I'm curious what your thoughts are this. If you have a group of people that you're friends with, work friends, let's just say 3, or even just 3 or 4, it's very hard to recruit that person out, because then they feel they're not so much disloyal to the company, but they're being disloyal to their little, you know, group of friends.
Yes.
And it makes it harder for that person to leave, because they feel part of that.
Yes. I think that's very important. I'll be honest, sometimes we all have our good days. We all have our bad days. I think we would be all lying if we go, oh, you know, every day is lovely. You know, it's like, but you know what would keep me at Pantheon? And I came to Pantheon where we just reached our 100 million. So this is the smallest company I've been, like, from an AR perspective. So I came here to really build. And there's times I go, why did I do this? But I will tell you, and I tell this to my, you know, it's okay. We all have it. I think we need to just be honest about it, right? But what keeps me going is my relationship with the CEO. And you know what else? The loyal people that came to follow me to work here, I will not let them down. Like, I'm not going to bail. I am going to make sure that we win here at Pantheon, win as a company, so that people who trust me, who are loyal, who gave me their trust as their chief people officer, so that I can make sure that I actively transform their work lives. And that keeps me at companies. And I think that's what leadership is. You have to be accountable to your people.
Absolutely. Do you think, is that commonplace? Because there's a lot of people who complain about HR and they feel, I
Oh
don't want
yeah.
to interact with them because they're going to just find fault with me, or I'm going to get in trouble for something, or it's like dealing with going to your accountant. You're really not crazy about doing that.
I call it like, please don't treat us like DMV. Okay. I know you
Yeah.
DMV to go get your license, and like, I get it, but no, we're not DMV.
Why is that? So there's this feeling by a lot of people like HR, and you're rolling your eyes. You're like,
I
oh,
know.
you're just gonna kind of bore me with all these like Rick kind of mentioned, all this paperwork and things I have to sign
Or like PIP lady. Do you guys
Yeah.
know what PIP ladies are?
Not PIP ladies, but I've heard of PIP. What's a PIP lady?
Like, like the PIP lady, they always like, they're only like, H comes and we're like a police, I call them
Yeah.
police, or like, here's your performance improvement plan.
Yes, okay.
It's like,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's.
So they see you coming down towards them. They go, oh no,
Oh
you're gonna put me
no,
on a PIP. I
what do
don't
they
want
want?
this.
What do they want?
Yeah.
Or like the boring trainings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that because like they're not, like you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, they're not trying to brand themselves, they're not trying to really reach out to people, they're not trying to engage. So they're doing their job, but they're not doing it with any empathy. They're not dealing with any compassion. They're not dealing with the humanity. Just, here's a form, fill this out. Here's this, and it creates this kind of chasm between the two, and knocking heads. Is that what ends up happening to some companies?
I think so. And I am
not Rick's company, by the way.
No, not Rick's
They're
company.
perfect.
Yeah,
They're
Never,
awesome.
never. I think it's I think a lot of them are in the, I would err on the side of, it's been the evolution of HR. Remember, I talked about personnel. That's what they did.
Yeah.
I'm, like personnel department. That's what they did. So
Yeah.
I think that HR has changed. It has evolved. It's so easy. It's so fascinating for me to see. But I think what people forget, and this is more to HR, and I love to do a lot of. I am passionate about building the next HR leaders, and HR. Like engineers, we have probably a lot of engineers. We're first business leaders, but we're really good at HR. Or you're a business leader, but you're really good at coding. Like, I would love to code. I can't. My brain is not wired that way. But I think what we need to think about is, if HR people look at themselves as, how do I impact the business? And when you say that, how do I impact the business? For Pantheon, I can impact the business through these people, because they're 80% of our OpEx. I can't do the business without these people. When you kind of start going from there, then you realize how you want to treat these people, right? And you are enabling them, you're helping them so they could drive the business. It's not compliance. Compliance is part of it, because, and we need to explain this to people, is compliance is part of it in terms of making sure the business is sound, right? That's not the end result of it, right? It's not the end result. So it's about really getting into the business and saying, how can I help you be your best so that we can win? So that is the key, so that our company could win in the market. Right. And to me, it's a really shift. And I think it's more I know everybody rolls their eyes and stuff like that, but I think I've seen some phenomenal HR. I know, and HR people just tend to love their HR process. And that's it. And I'm like, don't fall in love with HR process people. You ask your leaders if it helps them. If they say it doesn't help them, don't do it. That's a waste of time. Right. I really look at it very differently. And so I think it's really helping one engineer. If HR partner could help him or her be the best self and clear these pebbles and boulders to make that, so that we could win in the market. It's getting that alignment and winning. So I think a lot of them, I believe there's phenomenal HR people, but there are some the lagger personnel type too, that actually don't really focus with empathy and the experience part. They're more focused on getting that policy signed, so to speak. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think that's kind of where I think the technology is going to help you. We kept talking about the future workplace. Why wouldn't we use technology to get all those policies and compliance signed, right? And use HR to have these type of interaction to be so that when Rick is working in this role, how we bring out the best in Rick as a person and bring out the leader within Rick. That's what, to me, HR's role is. And so, and linking the best version of Rick to how we accomplish our company goals. I know I have a very different HR view, but that's how I really believe the future of HR will be.
Right. I want to pull on that thread a little bit then. I mean, you're talking about the future of HR and the use of technology, not just working in the technology industry as HR
No,
people,
using
but
technology.
exactly like that strikes me as, you know, HR is traditionally not seen as, you know, on the vanguard of innovation, right? It's still in many
We get
cases
such a
quite
bad
manual.
rap. I feel like I have to wear like a bad news bear jersey.
um, can you walk us through how modern HR teams are using technology, or what that future of HR might be?
Yes. I think generally speaking, Rick, somebody told me and I went, what? Our CFO? He's like, wow, Christine, you act so well. And I'm like, I did my multiplication table. Okay. I just don't know. I get stuck on multivariable calculus, but up to there, I got it. But these are the traditional stigmas of HR, right? And it is true. I'm just saying it is true. Generally speaking, human resources people are not comfortable with data and are not comfortable with technology. Okay, like just generally speaking. And I know the engineer audience probably roll their eyes as I'm speaking about this, but it is true. I'm going to just say it is. But I think that's what I'm talking about. The workplace evolution is why every people are using technology as consumers. We're all consumers. So they're used to it, right? So I think that in terms of HR, I'll give you an example. Sitecore, where I was before, was over 37 countries, right? And so we overlay, we have a big HRIS system, and you overlay, and I use Sitecore for Sitecore, right? Because what marketers are using is all these DXP and CMS, like Adobe, Sitecore. What are they? It's a content management system, and it takes Rick through the journey of a buyer to get into the shopping cart. Right. And it tracks and it personalizes based on that's what e-commerce is. So that's what Sitecore does. So I go, why can't we do that for employees? Because Rick doesn't care about Malaysia law on maternity leave. He only cares about US paternity leave for him. I'm just making this up.
Yeah.
No, but that's a good assumption.
Right? So what happens is our intranet was on Sitecore platform. So it was content that we want, and we saw it personalized based on your clicks.
Interesting.
Do you know what? And so that you can actually get 80% of your data on your own rather than calling a 1-800 HR hotline.
Right.
Do you know, like when you, and it actually, some of the HR information is vulnerable, right? Like whether you want, and everything is at the moment it matters. You don't care about your insurance policy until you go to a doctor and you're diagnosed with something. Right. So how do we create that experience at that moment, at the moment that matters, how you can consume and interact with that experience with mine. So when you think of, so using technology of employee experience, of creating those moments that matter for those people and making it very personalized to their region, but at the same time, have the content management that shoots out everything for the whole company. I'm just giving an example of those technology. You can do that, right? And it's really, it's about how can employees create that experience at moments that matter. What if I suddenly had a death? They don't know what to do, and they're in a different. So when you think about that situation and you create the process that allows a certain experience at those, where you put the employee at the center at moments that matter and create a process, that's a very different, and you have to use technology for that, because you can't have enough human to do that.
Can you also use technology and data to help people advance their career? So let's say somebody is, I'll make this up, just in marketing, and you could use the data of people who have progressed within your organization, say, wait, the same, Rick has advanced because, he started that. Hey, then maybe Jack could do the same thing. And we have this opening. So rather than going outside and trying to,
Yes.
hire a recruiter, promote from within. So you could use that data, the analytics and the technology to spot who's that person who we could kind of uplift.
Yes. And if anybody here, I have an idea on it. And if anybody listening to this podcast and you're a great engineer, call me. Maybe you could develop it for me. I really think that companies, especially when they're bigger, I agree with you, development. And I call that internal talent marketplace.
Yes.
Right. I'm implementing Workday right now, and I need a PMO for 6 months. Or I need a data architect for 6 months. Maybe I could put that, and you have John Doe in engineering that actually might want to go into that. Maybe he has some bandwidth to go do this for 6 months and go back. It's really, and that creates and that goes into my philosophy on, it's called internal talent marketplace, not for talent acquisition, geared towards development and accessibility and visibility.
I mean, I like that, right? Because earlier we were talking about how do we retain, right? We spend so much time, resources on the candidate side, on the employer side, getting folks into the door. But, if I can
Yes.
shift you around, give you more interesting, exciting projects, teach you something new so you can
Yes.
build a better resume and add to our alumni network, so to speak. That could be an easy fix, actually.
Exactly.
I mean,
It really, you don't need to go out and, do you know how many people I have my HR operations and data person, and I have her being PMO to my data analytics right now, right? Because then it gives her security to go do some data stuff without losing her job here. Do you know, as an HR professional? And maybe she'll come back and be and I'm doing that because I know I need to cultivate more technology-oriented, data-oriented HR. So then when they come back, it makes HR even better. She doesn't have to go someplace, and it doesn't risk her career in HR to go dabble into the data organization.
Right. Wow.
That's how I like to develop career, because it's not, people can't, those things really retain people and career paths. And that goes into my philosophy of talent. But the olden days of like hierarchy one, of course you get titles and it's so flawed because the way our salary structure is constructed and is hierarchical. So you almost have to keep going up to get more money. We don't incent people for pro imposition. Like when you kind of think about it, right? And I have all these wild ideas, because when you look at our salary structure, those were all invented in the 50s. And we're just kind of still using the similar thing. And in the 50s, our workforce and the way we did it were very different, right? So I love when we do these talent assessment, I love pro imposition. We want these wonderful pro imposition not to be leaders, okay? but they become leaders because that's the only way they think that could get them into different money. when you really kind of stop and think about it. So yeah, those are different things that I think have a lot of the HR leaders have to put our thought, it's like thought leadership. And I'm really dabbling with things like that. And I like to test things. I like to hack things. So like a little hacking mentality, but we could do it with the smaller group to hack to see what it does.
Because old school, like you said, back in the 50s,
Think
pretty
about-
much even now is
Yeah.
that, you know, hey, what do you do? The goal is, okay, I want to manage a person and I want to manage 2 people, 5 people, 10 people, 15. And that's the way you think you're supposed to
Yes.
do it. And then you can brag to your family and friends, look, I manage 50 people. Look how important I am. Whereas oftentimes the person may be amazing at their particular job and fantastic, but then you put them in management
Oh,
and
and
they're not as good.
not
and
only
they're
that,
better
but
off, right?
they ruin other people's lives.
Yes. Right. And it's like, why did you put that
No.
person there? This is the dumbest thing. This person
the
is
dumbest
the
thing.
what is it? The Peter principle, right? They go right to
you're
their
right,
own
too.
incompetence. So like, and then right, you make everyone underneath miserable. You suck at the job, and it was like, what? It's just so dumb.
And it's
You're
all
better off
lose,
being-
lose,
right?
lose.
Exactly.
It's a losing proposition. But
Exactly.
you know what, Jack? But you know what? Our corpus structure
Yeah.
is, and when you think about this, okay, this is really interesting. It's a little bit on me too, because I'm a baby boomer. Okay. I started my work in 1980s. I hate to say that, but all the leaders, when you look at all these top seasoned leaders, we were raised with that. So we only
Yeah.
know that.
That's it, right? That's what you think you're supposed to do. That's what's supposed to happen.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
So
like, how do we crack that paradigm?
because wouldn't it be where you could say, let's say, Rick, instead of saying, well, let me give you an example myself. I'm a terrible manager. And, you know, even though I founded the company, I run the company, I suck at management. So I delegate that to others. I'm better at recruiting. And I put my ego aside and say, you know what, I'm really not that good at administration and management. I recognize that about myself. And I enjoy the recruiting way more than anything else. And I'm better at it. So let me just run with it. So that you could then take that person and say, okay, we're not going to make you a management track because that's not your skills, but we can reward you because you're really good at what you do. And then maybe find some other things to get involved with. So you keep the person and you can compensate them for just being good instead of being, you know, going up the
Yeah,
ladder.
that's exactly what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
it's fundamental, but what I'm saying is structural problem
Yeah.
to do that. That's why people keep wanting to go up to make more.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a structural issue. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
What do you think about this trend of there's some tech companies out there that are embracing, like, I believe it's called like holacracy, where there's no titles and there's no hierarchies. Do you find that approach maybe possible of working out, or is it too extreme?
I'm not an extremist in any way, because nothing extremes works in my view. It's really a hybrid. And I think it also, I don't want to make a blanket statement because my HR vision is to provide extraordinary HR to transform the work life of others by bringing out the leader within.
Right.
To me, its leadership is not defined by position, but it's that I think that we are, and you know, we can't separate work from personal. To me, you know how we go work-life balance? To me, it's very integrated, right? If my kid pissed me off at home, I'm in a bad mood at work. Okay. Like I'm sorry. Like I try to be professional, but I get triggered easier.
Yeah.
Okay. Or if something, I shouldn't say crappy happened at work, I'm in a bad mood at home.
Yeah.
You guys,
Right.
I don't know, for me, right? And I get easily triggered. It's not that I'm talking about it.
We all do this. We all do.
Yeah,
At least
exactly.
you're just admitting it, and you're just saying. But I go through the same. I'm with you. It's just common. We all do it. We just
We all do it,
don't
right?
like to acknowledge that we do it.
Yeah, and it's so therefore it has to be a nice integration of work life. You know, like to me, it's not like you don't go 70% work, 30, like you go, there's no 50-50 in my, it just hangs over. So anyways, I think with that said, to me so I really think to me it's a hybrid. Like so position, you need it because you do need a order. When I
Got
say
it.
do you know what you need
Yeah.
positions and titles and a little bit hierarchy for not for hierarchy of I am better than you, but it's for general order. When you have 2,000 employees, when you don't have that, it actually creates chaos. And to me, so you need to balance. It's almost like this. I went to a country, I'm not going to say it, and they don't even have, it was like a dirt road, and I was holding onto my car like this because there was no signals and it's like almost like that. And so when it's like few cars, if you're 100 employees, that works. But when you start growing, it doesn't. It becomes like traffic. Have you ever seen that visual where all these
from all different directions, the cars like
together? But and then, but you need roads, signs, on them, so that people could go fast. So to me, it's not I call the DMV lady. I'm not talking about that, like, but I'm talking about creating. So to me, positions and titles and things like that are required for order. It's guardrails, right? That allows people to have clear signals on what to do off that, but not from a positional power perspective. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Rick, just out of curiosity, I'm not really familiar with companies that do that. Is that becoming common? The whole
Admittedly, it's a trend from quite a few years ago,
Mhm.
but it's Tony Hsieh and Zappos before he sold it to Amazon. He was a big believer in everyone just has their functional areas that they're responsible for. Like you're the head of recruiting, you're the head of PR, you're the like that is your kind of sphere of influence, so to speak. That's the OKRs that you're responsible for. But beyond that, there was they tried to get away from hierarchy, right? Like yes, he was the founder and CEO, but he was quote unquote just like everyone else, right? He had his own desk right in the middle of the office, and that was the vibe, right? There are companies like Gusto that just have no titles, and it's very similar. Like there's definitely hierarchy, but they want to empower people to uh, not have this kind of thing in the back of their mind and saying, "Oh, well, I'm only a manager, and so I have to ask my director, and then only my director can talk to my vice president." They want to get rid of that kind of formality or that um, old habit, so to speak.
Yeah, but I get the point, but that also comes to leadership,
Right.
okay, and culture. It's not taking titles out that creates it. Okay, because I don't
Yep.
even if you don't have title, we've all read. We're human here, okay? We all read The Lords of the Flies.
Right.
So you create it anyways. It doesn't matter, okay? So to me, it's not that's a fundamental view of leadership, the type of leadership, type of interaction and experience you want to give. To me, it has nothing to do with titles. I mean, that's the lead. Remember, I told you it's the leadership, right? Like our CEO could call my recruiting coordinator anytime. I don't care. They could call it. That's the leadership philosophy and how they create the safe and accessibility. I keep talking. That's more important to me than the artificial title, no title.
I think that's a good reminder, right? Because especially for our community, they're very ambitious, right? It's the reason
I love it.
the name of our podcast is The Blind
Yeah.
Ambition, because they are optimizing for that
Yes.
next step, right? Whether that's more pay, whether that's a job title, whether that's a quote unquote more prestigious company, so to speak, or a larger company. And it's very easy to get into that rat race. And then you see on Blind that these are the same folks that seem like they have it together in terms of what they want.
Mm.
They might be halfway there, or they might even be there. And then they find themselves unhappy.
Yeah.
right? Because it goes back to earlier when they're not aligned on values or missions, or perhaps they haven't optimized for greater purpose or that
Yeah,
psychological reward rather than just,
that's right.
total rewards.
I
Yeah,
I personally encourage everyone, go for it. Like I'm saying the world is yours, go for it. But here's a couple things that I want, and I'm speaking for myself. And I'm a little bit in the later in my career, so I'm just kind of speaking. I thought I shared some of my learning is um, whether you're saving the world by changing, like Pantheon, we say we're changing by web ops, or doing that. At the end of the day, to me, it's about who I work with, because life is short. So, whatever we're doing, it's work, and all of us are good at what we do. And we should, and to me, the technical skill is only one component of it. To me, even if you're super good, it's who you work with that actually lifts you up or lifts you down. So to me, is as long as certain, and I'm not going to, I always tell this to my CEO, Zach, I said, I'm not going to do it for free, but at some point, at the economy of scale, like at some point, it's about my experience, who I work with in my, and make your days count.
right.
Because that is much more rewarding of, I will choose who I get to. So in my career, I want to choose, of course, a viable company and stuff like that, but who I'm going to work with, because that makes my life joyous.
I like that. Thanks for that warm advice, Christine. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks. And for everyone listening, don't, if you forget everything, don't worry about Christine Park, but Pantheon is the best kept secret in the Bay Area. So
Are,
keep
are,
an
are
eye
you are
on
you growing at
Pantheon.
a
Well, you
are
know
you
what?
growing at a rapid clip there? Are you like what roles are you hiring right now?
A lot, like a lot of engineers. So we are only at 100 million right now, but we're Series Z. We got our funding, and I love it because companies go through this inflection point after 100 million. So we're really building for big impact. So yeah, a lot of engineering position. We're very technical, like
Right.
lot of position, even customer support, DevRel, like everything is a very technical position here. So I just want, thank you so much for having me here. I just love, I could talk about HR and employee experience for 2 hours, okay? And I have a lot of philosophy, but for everyone out there, I think really reflect, because we do have to bring out the leader within and optimize. We're all in this world to do things great. Like everyone needs to do greatness. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic.